Okay, and so you see that it sort of prettily displays it, so it's easy for the eye to look at the data file. That is also an important part of using Python meaningfully. Is like, if you can inspect the data and eyeball it, you can catch a lot of errors that you might have made in terms of like your programming stuff. So having Python output your data in a format that is like easy for you to read is also good. And when you're programming, you will make errors. It's never perfect the first time through. But if you stick with it and persevere, you can get it to do an amazing amount of work for you. So you save yourself, and you can reallocate that research time to do more. Okay, let me teach you one more escape character. That's what these magical characters are called with the backslash. The next character I want to teach you is called the new line character. So let's just inspect this really quickly. All I did was tell it to use the same strings as before, except that I had it actually only print one string, and now I put a new line character in the middle of that string. So the new line character says, when you print this string out to the screen, if you get to this magical backslash n character, start a new line on the output display. Okay, so now you've seen the very, very basics of strings. We've seen how to print strings in Python, and we've seen a couple of the escape characters that you would need to use. Actually, these are the ones that I routinely use. All other ones I almost don't use ever. So, I mean, your needs might be different than mine, but you'll almost certainly need to use these if you're dealing with text data. You almost certainly won't need to use other ones until you get to some advanced stuff and you know what you're doing. Okay, are there any questions about what we've done so far?
One of the questions, my computer keeps freezing.
Is that a question?
No, it's not a question, but I don't.
Oh, it's not frozen. Just press enter.
What?
Oh, can you click on this guy? Sure enough, it's frozen.
Yeah.
Okay. That is not a Python problem, I think.
I think you're talking about that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let us take up a sort of quick and dirty application of Python. Okay, so as I told you before, Python cares about data types. So one data type that there is string. Another data type is number. So let's do our first number, 2. It's one of my favorite numbers. Okay. If you type in 2 plus 2, it will tell you the answer, which is 4. Okay, so there's something interesting going on, and I don't want to dwell on this point, but I want to mention it. And that is that when you type in a numerical expression, right, I didn't type in any command. I didn't tell it print 2. I just told it 2. But yet somehow, for some reason, it printed the value. Okay, the reason for that is when you are running the shell and you enter a numerical expression or any other expression that returns a value, Python will attempt to print a string representation of the value that was returned. Okay, so let's go back and see what I mean. Okay, so what I said before is when you type in a line into the shell and when you type it into the file and execute the file, it's the same. And it's not, strictly speaking, literally the same. And that's the difference. So if we run this guy, Okay, it printed the 2 lines that I told it to print, but it did not print the value of 2. So when you're running in the shell, it will always attempt to display a string representation of the value that was returned by the last object, or the last statement. But when you're running a file, you often don't want that to happen. Right? Some of the things that you do will involve creating a new object in Python, and you don't want it to display the entire object every time you create a new object or change the value of one object. That would be really bad and would make your computer go really slow. So the default behavior is to not display stuff in the script file unless you explicitly tell it to. Whereas for the shell, the default behavior is to always display whatever the thing is that you did in the last line. It's just because normally when you're entering instructions line by line, you want to see what they do. Whereas when you're running a program, you don't want to see what it does unless you tell it, please show me this. That's the only difference that I'm aware of between running from the shell and running from the running a script file. Okay, so if you want to use Python as a calculator, then you just bring up the Python shell, you type in whatever you want to. Ordinarily, for regular old arithmetic, this is, I mean, you can use your calculator or whatever, but you can also do more fancy stuff. So let's say you want to know the value of e to the 10. Then it says, no, we can't do that. And you're like, what? This is like a programming language that's used by the dudes at NASA, and it can't like calculate like e to the 10? That's crazy. It's not crazy. It's like if you want to do any high-powered math, then you tell it, I'm going to do some math by saying import math. And now, if we want to access the exponential function, we say, go to the math module, look up the exponential function, and calculate the value when I feed 10 in as the argument to the exponential function. Do we always have to do that?
Yeah.
Do you always have to do what?
The math bit.
If you want to access this function, you need to tell Python that you're going to use the math module. There is another way that you can do it, which you are discouraged from doing, is considered bad form. And that is to say, from math, import exp. And now, if I want to use exp, it will say, okay, I'm going to search around and see if there's a function named exp in the regular namespace, and there's not. So now, oh look, check it out. There's this other place that I'm supposed to search for things that are called exp. So I'll go look in there. And I think that if you're just going to use one function from a big old module and you're going to use it over and over and over again, it's probably okay to do this. But really, ordinarily, it's going to be better for you and better for the person that has to debug your code if you always are just explicit about where you're getting that function from. Especially if the person that's debugging your code is you, and which is normally how it is for me, and you come back 4 months later and you're like, what the hell is this function? I don't even know what this does. If you have to explicitly indicate what module it comes from, that often really helps you out a lot in terms of like figuring out where the errors are coming from and this kind of stuff.